Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education, a podcast that focuses on what is happening in education today, connecting everyone to the movers and shakers that are breaking boundaries in the education arena.
Welcome. This is Jerry and Jamie here, and we are really looking forward to having this podcast offered to all of you today. We don't often get some royalty on our podcast, so we are really excited to hear all about what the Smithsonian is doing, especially this summer. Jerry, you excited too?
I can't wait. I can't imagine our guest's life working at the Smithsonian. It must be a dream come true to be among all of those documents and all of the education. And I just can't wait to hear what Dr. Chism has to tell us today. So, Dr. Chism, welcome. We are so happy to have you here today. And can you tell us just a little bit what that life's like and what you've been up to?
Well, thank you so much, Jamie and Jerry. It's such a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me on. And, I have my entire professional career has been in education. I was a teacher. I worked at the state policy level in Illinois, the Illinois State Board of Education. I went to the U.S. Department of Education and was there for a while. But I do have to agree with you that being at the Smithsonian and being the Undersecretary for Education at the Smithsonian is literally like a dream job. I feel so lucky and fortunate every day. Yesterday marked my 2-year anniversary. And I think that what I have realized most is that being able to do the work at the Smithsonian has really made me remember why I am so passionate and I love education. It just brings back all the joy and the excitement and the wonder and the curiosity. And I just have an opportunity to really do what I love and bring that to so many people across the nation. So,
And you said you're a former educator. Yes. What do you want educators to know about the Smithsonian? Because I don't think we know enough.
I think that's right. So one of the things that I have come to understand is that we have so many resources that are free. They are free resources. So we have instructional resources, we have professional development for teachers, we have content, tons of primary sources, educational experiences in our museum and online. But I fear that it's the best kept secret in the world. I don't know that educators across the nation really know or have a sense of the things that are available to them. So we're trying to conquer that in a number of ways. And one way is this summer, we're actually hosting our 3rd annual National Education Summit.
Yeah, that's exciting. We've heard about this, and this is in July. Is that right?
Yes, it's in July. So it's coming up for a couple of weeks away. And it's really an opportunity for us to highlight the intersections of our work in science, history, culture, art, because that's really our sweet spot. We really are working at that intersectional space. And our theme this year is Together We Thrive, fostering a sense of belonging. And so we'll have about 40 sessions. Sorry. We have several dynamic keynotes. It'll happen over the course of 3 days. It's all free, and it will be both in person and virtual.
Oh, okay. So it's in July, it's for 3 days, and you can come into Washington and experience it in person for those 3 days. And otherwise, you can access it virtually. What are those 3 days in July?
July 18th, 19th, and 20th. So we'll start off on the 18th with a really dynamic reception. And then the 19th and 20th will be full days of programming. I do have to say that I know everybody can't make it to DC and can't be in person, but for those who do, it's going to be very special. We're doing some really dynamic behind the scenes learning opportunities where participants will get to go behind the scenes in our museums and the National Zoo, talk with our educators and curators and see things that aren't on display for the public all the time. So it'll be a really unique experience, one that the Smithsonian can provide. So
It sounds very unique. Now, you said that the theme is Together We Thrive, fostering a sense of belonging. What does that mean? What is the representation there?
Yeah, Together We Thrive really builds on a body of research that's been done by the science of learning and development. And a whole bunch of researchers came together from multiple disciplines to ask the question, can all students thrive? And after a lot of research, they were able to scientifically answer the question that we as educators already know. Yes, all students have the potential to thrive given the right circumstances. So if they have the right context, the right relationships, the right support, safety and security, yes, all students have the potential to thrive. And so given where we are in the national landscape of education, because we're facing many challenges, I would maybe argue that we're at a crisis point. We have to come together in multiple sectors, public education. We have to look at public-private partnerships, museums and cultural institutions. We all need to come together to ensure that students thrive. And the fostering a sense of belonging really is, how do we, as the adults in the space, make sure that students feel connected to what they're learning, that they feel seen, that they feel acknowledged, that they feel honored? And so how do we help to foster that sense of belonging?
I think that word thrive is so key in all of this because it really does elevate the importance, and it really does hone in on that aspect that you just described of making sure that students see themselves in what they're learning and they're not just passive in this. And when they are feeling seen, heard, and valued and a part of the learning experience, that's when that thriving takes place. I love that. I think that that's really key.
That's absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Tell us some of the speakers you're going to have. Who's going to be at the summit?
I am really excited about our speakers. So we are going to start off with the 2023 National Teacher of the Year.
Oh, I love that.
She has a great story, and she also has this focus on thinking about belonging and inclusion. And Rebecca Peterson is her name. And then we will also, on the first day of full programming, be joined by Monique Pancholi. You might know him as an actor, author, and activist. And he has really kind of focused in on bullying, specifically looking at Asian American Pacific Islander communities, and also has done a lot of advocacy around supports for students who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgendered. So he will be joining us in conversation with one of our Smithsonian Educators of the Year. On day 2, we'll be joined by Dr. Pamela Cantor, who's one of the leading researchers in the science of learning and development. And she'll be helping us unpack the science and the research. And then I actually have a chance to interview several students who will join us, who will share information about their learning journey and help us really understand how they feel connected to their learning environments. And then we're going to end with a keynote presentation from students from LA Unified School District and Finder Play Foundation. During the pandemic, Finder partnered with LA Unified School District to offer free instruments and then also free lessons to students to help really focus on that arts integration. So it's a wonderful example of how a public-private partnership can come together, support arts integration, and really help students feel connected. But I did miss one that I probably should go back and talk about. On the reception night, we will have a panel with our very own Secretary Lonnie G. Bunch, the DC Teacher of the Year, and also Curtis Valentine. And we have invited, and I think he'll be able to join us, Chancellor John King, who is the former Secretary of Education. All of these panelists share in common their African ancestry. And so we will be exploring a conversation around Black male youth and, what was their personal learning journey? How did they feel connected to the learning environment? And how can we all, as educators who care about Black male youth, really help foster that sense of belonging? So those are a couple of our keynotes.
It's quite an impressive lineup. And you have taken this intersectionality to heart. I mean, you have people from all over coming together. I wonder, it's kind of the elephant in the room question. What do you get any political blowback about having people talking about LGBTQ students being included? I know that can be an issue, and I wonder, how does the Smithsonian deal with that issue?
That's a great question, Jerry, and a really important question too. And so, one of the things that I take very seriously and all of our colleagues take very seriously is that the Smithsonian brand is a trusted source. So we have a responsibility to be accurate, nonpartisan, uh, complete and thorough in our presentation of information. So those are our standards. That is our guiding light. And one of the things that we also feel a responsibility for is thinking about the shared future that we want to have. So Secretary Bunch has identified for the Smithsonian our overarching strategic focus on our shared future. And so we are a set of museums, cultural institutions, science centers, and do focus a lot on history. But we have a responsibility to also help to be the change that we want to see in the world and help to support those conversations. And so they're not easy. It's not easy. It's difficult. It's sometimes uncomfortable. But we feel like we have a responsibility to, as a trusted source, to bring these conversations to the town square and figure out collectively how we listen to one another and how we then work together to move forward.
Yes, that's great. And you're built on such solid pillars that it makes that work a little easier to stand on that solid ground as you move forward, I would think.
Yeah. Yes.
And having that guiding light of your pillars and your beliefs and how, what the Smithsonian represents makes it a little bit easier, right? When you might question things, you just always go toward that and continue. Now, our podcast is LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education. So we love to feature different initiatives like yours and the work that you do specifically. But how would you describe how this summit is actually breaking boundaries?
That's a great question. And I love that you guys are out here breaking boundaries. I love that. So the summit, I think, is breaking boundaries in a number of different ways. We have 4 strands for the summit. The first one is life on a sustainable planet, where we're thinking all about climate change and the environment and sustainability. The second strand is STEAM education. The third strand is reckoning with our racial past. And the fourth strand is integrated arts. And so, again, at that intersection space, we're really trying to show people how you can have a conversation about astronauts and women's history and science all in one, nicely packaged delivery. So I think in terms of breaking boundaries, we're trying to help people get, in my opinion, I would argue, that in some ways we have moved away from that kind of well-rounded education and the connection to content that gets students excited. There is, I think, a necessity to focus on the courses that are tested, and there's a purpose for that. But I fear that we're kind of pushing out the things that really then help with college readiness, career readiness, and civic readiness. And so I hope that we're kind of breaking boundaries in that way, bringing back kind of a focus on well-rounded education.
I totally understand what you're saying. When I taught, it was in the 90s, and we talk about this a lot, but there was a huge emphasis on interdisciplinary approaches to education, because in real life, it's not, going to math, close the book, and science, close the book. And we need to see how they play with each other and how they intersect. And we used to have interdisciplinary teams, and students would be able to, we planned together in our different core disciplinary tracks. We still plan together so that students can see how all of this connected. And so I think this, and I agree, I see over the past decade and a half, it seems to have shifted away from that. You brought up testing, that could be part of it. There's such an emphasis on testing, which, it does certainly have its importance, but we still have to teach in the best way possible, with best practices and best pedagogy. And I think the way that you're running your summit is really speaking to that importance. So I agree with you. I completely agree with you. Yeah, absolutely.
Monique, what other trends do you see in education that are happening that the Smithsonian is supporting?
Well, we have a strong emphasis on science. I think that as a nation, we recognize the importance of thinking about the science, engineering, technology, math, arts, disciplines, and how that translates into our workforce and how that makes us ready to be a competitive nation. So we have a strong emphasis and focus on STEAM education, but also thinking about what that means for the workforce and how we make sure that women are represented in the workforce, that we're diversifying the STEM workforce. And so that's one of our areas of emphasis.
Yes, of course. Well, also in the news, we hear so much about social studies and the book bans and all of this happening. What is the Smithsonian's? I know that you stay politically neutral, but how do you navigate those waters?
Yeah, I think back over, I've, been in my professional kind of education world for, just over 25, 26 years. And I have to say that I know that things ebb and flow, but in my professional experiences, I think that this is probably one of the most challenging and difficult times for teachers. We know that I think it's now 18 states across the nation that have passed legislation that is having a chilling effect on how teachers are thinking about teaching content related to race, gender, and gender identity. And we know that there's conversations that are going on, about the inclusion of the new African American Studies AP course. So across the nation, there's a discourse that's happening, and it's having an impact on teachers, and I think a chilling effect. Parents and community are also really engaged in thoughtful conversations about what's going on in the classroom and how that is influencing or impacting their students in ways that I think are needed, important, and meaningful. What we are trying to do at the Smithsonian is support educators. Educators know their context best. They know their needs best, and they know how they are kind of navigating these spaces. So we are trying to be a support and resource for them. And I think one thing, sometimes there are things that stick with us and kind of wake us up or come into our dreams or the silent spaces. And we have an opportunity every year to meet all of the state teachers of the year. So there's 54 that come and spend time with us. And about 2 years ago, we had a focus group with these teachers, and the teachers were pleading with me for the Smithsonian to do something, that they were feeling so constrained, fearful for losing their jobs, and needed cover. They needed the backup. They needed support in order to just be able to do the work that they are passionate about doing. So honestly, since then, that's what I've been trying to do. I've been trying to make sure they have the resources, that they know when they're using our content, that it's reliable, that we're offering opportunities for them to think about how to engage in these conversations in ways that that support learning, make learning joyful. So that's the role of the Smithsonian. And what we focus on is telling inclusive, holistic stories. And the one example that I like to use, and I know I'm talking a lot, so I'm sorry. The one example that I like to use is that I think one of our greatest American stories is the story about Neil Armstrong and the moon exploration. One of our great American stories. There's also other parts of that story. There was innovation that happened in the design of the astronauts' uniform. And that happened by a group of seamstresses, primarily women, who designed this innovative, the astronauts' uniform to go to space. There were also women that were part of the computation of helping us get to the moon. So including these stories takes nothing away from Neil Armstrong. It also then presents an opportunity to talk about a more inclusive picture of the contributions of other groups of people. And so that's how we try to focus on these conversations, focusing on inclusive stories, focusing on joyful learning, focusing on complete and accurate history.
I think that's part of the joy of visiting the Smithsonian is the intriguing, it's a treasure trove, right? Literally. So I think having those intriguing stories of the behind the scenes are really just so inspirational. And that's being there. You have that, it's incredible to be there. But where can people find resources if we're not there? What are some of those resources that you offer, and where can we find them?
We have a great tool. It's called our Smithsonian Learning Lab. And we have been able to digitize a significant number of objects in our collection. And so people can go to our Smithsonian Learning Lab. They will find digitized objects, videos, music, and also lesson plans. Some of the lessons are curated from our Smithsonian educators, but many of them are created by teachers across the nation who kind of take our objects, create lessons, and then share them with the world. So that's one way. We also have some robust gaming experiences, lots of videos. We have a Smithsonian education YouTube channel. So there's a number of different ways that we're trying to create access to our content. We have some great partnerships with PBS Learning, so we're trying to really think through our dissemination.
Oh, wonderful. So we're going to link all of these in our description of this too, to make it easy. I think that'll be a good thing to do, Jerry, kind of list each of those because they all sound really exciting. And you mentioned bringing joy to students, and you're touching on some of the important instructional strategies that are so important, especially with children today. When you talked about gamification, you talked about videos, and that's how we learn now. So I think it's really great that you're hitting all of those.
The other piece I like about it is that they are reliable. Teachers know that it's been vetted, that this is okay to use, and that the Smithsonian stands behind it, because there's so much out there now that we do have to make sure things are reliable. So that's a real plus for our teachers.
Yeah, and I love too that you mentioned also the lesson plans that are available were created by teachers also. So that makes it even better too. So when you reflect on the upcoming summit, which, Jerry, we'll see if we can take a trip to DC to check it out.
Know.
Otherwise, we can certainly catch it virtually. What do you hope that attendees can take away from the event? What is your ultimate hope there?
Well, first, I hope that they walk away feeling celebrated. I love teachers. I love educators. I want this to be a time of celebration and just honor for them. So I hope that they feel recognized, heard, seen, acknowledged, celebrated, first and foremost. Second, we've really designed it in a way that we're hoping that they can walk away with, like, literally after going to a session, some strategies that they can take back to their classroom immediately. And then third, a network. I think part of what we recognize, anyone who's great in the profession has a network of people that they can turn to and rely on. And so hopefully it's helping them expand and grow their networks.
I love it.
You
And
hit the trifecta there for
that's
teachers.
right.
Celebrate them, giving them something they can go back and use on Monday, and creating the network. I think that's the ultimate. I think
True.
you hit it.
It's true. And this is for K through 12 teachers?
It's it's for pre-K through 12 is our target audience, but we're also reaching out to librarians, media specialists, administrators, museum educators. We're partnering with organizations like the Library of Congress. And so there's a little bit of something for everybody. And we're able to connect with 4,000 educators last year. We've set a goal to try to reach 6,000 this year. So we really are kind of thinking through a wide array of programming that meets different.
And I love the way you've democratized it by making it available virtually for those that can't afford to come to Washington, D.C. I think that's great.
Yes. Yeah. I would love for you guys to come. I'll send you the information. Would love for you to be there with us on the reception night too, because I think that's going to be really dynamic.
Oh, we would love that. Yes.
We really would. That would be fabulous.
Don't invite us because we will show up.
Yeah, that's good. That's the truth.
Yes. Well, Monique, as we kind of land this plane today, we always like to ask the question, through the work that you've been doing with the Smithsonian and with teachers, what has become clear to you?
What has become clear to me is that we have so much opportunity and potential as individuals, as a community, and as a nation. And I know that there have been many things that have been priorities and sometimes distractions over the last couple of years. But I really do believe in my heart of hearts that if we can come together on many different issues and fronts, that we really will be stronger together and that we will thrive. So I have come to have a greater appreciation of the capacity of our, the capacity of our democracy to do great things. So I'm encouraged by that, and I want to be a facilitator in helping to cultivate that.
That's great. Well, we have really enjoyed this. I didn't know that there were so many resources the Smithsonian had, and I suspect our listeners didn't either. So I'm anxious for us to be able to put out some links so that they can take full access of those moving forward.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the work that you're doing. It's so important. And I just really appreciate being in conversation with people who are passionate about education.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for the work you're doing, and best of luck. This sounds phenomenal. And maybe you'll see Jamie and I there.
I hope so. Yeah.
Thank you for listening. And if you would like to stay linked up, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify, and subscribe to us on YouTube.